Hello and welcome to the Gridiron Survivor live stream. I'm Shashi, and this is the team: Danielle, Richard, Cody, Mai, Corina, Alex. We have a few more individuals, but it's this is not required. And the team, we work whenever we can. So these streams are always around the same time, but I'm hoping we can change the time so it works for majority more of our new majority users. So first off, what is the Grand Survivor, right? Like we've been doing these streams and we have this app, but what is it and why is it beneficial? Um, so on Twitter, I kept reviewing portfolios and seeing individuals that are junior or trying to break into tech just have really poor portfolios and they had no experience in process or code reviewing or working as a team. So I asked my friend Rudy if we could build this app for him. It's an NFL Survivor application, but on top of that, adding a corporate process to it so that these individuals that are trying to break into tech as junior developers can understand how it is to work in sprints, agile, code reviews, communication, in their own different teams as well. We have the UX pod. We have the functional engineering pod, and then we also have the documentation pod, and then we have a designer as well. So that designer is she's inside the UX pod, but she's pretty much siloed outside as well. So having different departments, you can talk to your own internal team, or you can talk to the wider team, making it feel like as if it's a full-fledged company. So my goal is to help these individuals, mentor them, and also hopefully help kick them off the team because they got a job in engineering. So today's schedule is we're going to do some sprint demos. And then after that, we're going to review the sprint board. And then we're just going to have some closing. But before we get to that, we have to thank our sponsors. Appright is one of our sponsors. Get Kraken, Blog Recorder, Use Pastel, and Front End Mentor. We want to thank all of our sponsors because we have a challenge going on right now. All these sponsors provided a prize for the first place winner, and then some of them provided for a second place winner. We are down to the last two. So hopefully it'll wrap up. And sorry to say, but I am one of the two. So just so happened that I'm one of the two. But we're hoping that we can wrap it up, clean some things up, and we are planning to have a revival pool, which means that in a couple weeks here, we're going to start all over, but start later in the NFL season and have more prizes and have another competition. This way, we can gather some data and have other individuals participate. The app has matured. We've had more features in there and a lot of things that we're proud of. So we would love to have you join this competition when we have it open. So first things first, we're gonna do some sprint demos, and this is from the documentation pod. Did y'all come up with a name yet? Because everybody has a name for their pod.
No, we really should though.
Yeah.
I haven't really thought about a name for us yet, but I'll definitely think of one soon. Or we'll think of one soon.
No problem. All right. Did you want to share your screen, Richard?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
Oh, and then to explain what sprint demos are, sprint demos right now, we're at the end of our sprint. And I wanted each pod to come up with a demo for their group because we work on a lot of features and whatnot. Even features that you're still working on, like you can showcase that, kind of letting the team know what things are coming up, what you're working on, and then when you complete them, it's a good way for us to understand like what we've done, what the achievement we've done as a team, as a pod. And so this week, I've tasked each team to come up with at least one demo, and Richard is going to demo something from the documentation pod.
DDO. So this is the welcome page, and right off the bat, first off, I want to say that this is Walter's work. I am presenting for him. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make today's meeting, so I'll be presenting on his behalf. Second thing, I know, light mode, but right now we're trying to match the styling for the other documentation articles in our documentation for our application, and then later, if we want to talk about adding a dark mode and toggle between that for our documentation, that's down the line. But right now, we're just focusing on adding content and making sure that the documentation looks good. So right off the bat, you can see our logo here that was made by our designer Jaina, and looks pretty good, centered and all that jazz. And then we have a little head here, and a little paragraph preceding it, just talking a little bit about Survivor is, talking about giving a small introduction to the application itself. We also have links right after that. If you're a developer, you can check out our code in our repository, take a look at that, and then you can also check out our website right after that if you're interested in just browsing around what the application is capable of and all the great features that we worked so tirelessly to develop. And then right below that, you can see all of our wonderful sponsors that Shashi introduced during today's stream. We have AppWrite, Blog Recorder, Frontend Mentor, GitKraken, and Pastel, all centered around here. And we have their beautiful logos, kind of here to display in our documentation. And then finally, we have Meet Our Team. And as you can see here, we have all the team members listed here with all their social links from their GitHub to their LinkedIn and Twitter. If they don't have a particular social media account, it's not included, obviously. And then we also have their respective titles as well. So you can see the engineering manager, software engineer, UX engineer, down to, documentation engineer. Oh, Maya, I didn't know you were part of the documentation team. But yeah, you can also see Karina's accessibility specialist, and Michael is the documentation engineer. And finally, I want to touch a little bit on the collapse here. As you can see, it's no longer, when I booted it up, you didn't see all the files being expanded. That's because when Walter created this, we also suggested that it would be on default collapsed. And so that it is more scalable as we add more documentation to this. And that way, if the user wants to see more into that category, they can click on it for themselves and expand on it. So yeah, that is the welcome page.
So let's see here. Okay, got it right. Okay, so first off, what is Storybook?
Sorry, gotta drink water after all that talking. Storybook is a great tool that we use to it's a way for us to cross-function between documentation as well as the components themselves. And what I mean by that is, so if you take a look at the components here, you can not only see the visual aspect of what the component looks like, but you can also kind of configure with it as well, and configure and specifically for what we add for the component itself. So for our button here, we added an on-click, and we also added a variety of variants, which is what this title or label is, and that basically determines what kind of button it will be. So right now it's on a default button type, and then we can change that into a danger type button or something like that, and then it'll here you'll see that the button doesn't really register that because that isn't a proper variant. So I would probably have to take a look at the code to make sure, hey, if this is a proper variant, and then I can configure there. So that's pretty cool about Storybook.
Okay. And then, so question, how come we're using, putting the documentation files inside Storybook?
So we're putting the documentation in Storybook because we want to separate the documentation from the application itself, because documentation in itself is its own thing, right? We don't want someone to be like, hey, I want to learn more about the backside of all the details, all the nitty-gritty details of the application, right? What stacks did you guys use? Can I take a look at your components without looking at the code, right? Because sometimes the repositories can get very big when it comes to big scale applications. And there are times where you're like, oh, I want to take a look at what your component's capable of doing, but I don't want to really go through all your folders to find one component and read through all the lines of code just to figure out what it's doing. And in that sense, Storybook is able to allow us to kind of be like, hey, this is what our component is able to do in a very user-friendly way. And you're able to configure with it easily. You're able to see all the props that we added, and you can see the styling as well for that.
So it's a single source for truth for all of our documentation, correct?
Correct. But
Okay.
we want to aim it to be that way. Yes.
Okay. So one thing I do want to mention is when you go to the welcome page, when I reviewed it, it didn't look like this.
Mhm.
The fonts are off. It was in dark mode, and the spacing was better. Was there something that happened there? Because like if you even look at the buttons too, like the button components, it's using sans serif fonts, and it's not using the fonts that like sometimes yeah, the button heading does, but the button itself, click me, it's not our font. Must be
That's
a
a
bug, right?
That's a good question, Shashi. I did pull from develop, so I'm not sure. I mean, I'll have to take a look at it after the stream to make sure that I
Yeah.
didn't like it might be a me thing, right? I have to double check that like maybe I pulled it incorrectly, or maybe that there are still lasting changes in the main develop branch that I still haven't pulled into my current branch. So I'll have to take a look at that. If it's not a me problem, then I have to take a look at the storybook code and see what's going on, configure if that's a bug, and then confirm with you and make sure we
Okay.
add a ticket for that, and then go from there.
Awesome. Any other comments or questions from the team? What are the next steps for Storybook?
For documentation in general, or just
Mhm.
storybook?
Utilizing Storybook, yeah.
Um, I would say definitely we need to talk about adding an onboarding for new team members. I think that's definitely a next step for us because as we have new members here, I think they have been compiling a document for themselves, writing down notes for what they feel we did well with the onboarding system and what they feel like that we could improve upon in the onboarding. And that way, when we compile all those notes together, we can add it into this doc so that it's in one centralized location and it's easy to find. I think that's definitely one step we need to consider. And another step I think we need to consider right after that is coding practices for our team. I'm not sure if I want to add this specifically to Storybook or just it will be an internal thing, but that can be a discussion as well.
Okay. Awesome.
Barry, could you elaborate what you mean by coding practices? Like the standard of coding, or like practices that you could practice code? Yeah, sorry, just want to clarify that.
Yeah, just for clarification, it's for coding standards for our specific
Mm.
team because I think we definitely have throughout our time in Gridiron Survivor, we've noticed that we each of us have particular coding styles that we tend to gravitate towards, and and specifically when it comes to code reviews, that tends to reflect when it comes to comments and feedback. I think Shashi has also noticed this as well regarding like the different variations that come with our different opinions when it comes to what we prefer and what we think is the right way to approach a certain problem. So I think we need to establish some kind of core aspect of okay, this is the way we want to approach certain aspects of coding, so that we have some type of consistency moving forward for both code reviews and PR.
All right. Makes sense. Coding standards. Yeah, it's a big thing to have because you obviously want when new people come in or when there's a question, you can say, hey, like these are agreed upon coding standards. So awesome. Anything else?
That's all for me.
Okay, how do I take you off?
I'll stop
Thank
sharing.
you, Richard.
Yeah.
Storybook is a very fantastic tool. Hope I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more from it. So,
Same here.
all right. So next we have Corina. Corina is representing the Grid Squad, which is the UX team and includes design as well. Design and accessibility.
Okay, let me just give me a second to share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Share screen.
And Danielle, if you have that question, just ask it. that like for me, like I didn't even see your question, but I'll ask those questions anyways because our audience, most of them are new, and it's nice to us to explain what we're doing, what we're implementing, and what the tools are. So yeah, it's definitely nice to reiterate it.
Am I sharing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, hi everyone. So we are using radio buttons, excuse me, for our weekly picks page. A radio button gives the user, or a radio group gives the user options, but the specific kind of options. So I have, let's say I have several buttons. The user can pick maximum one. So there's the choice to leave the radio group without making a choice, or only one choice. Okay, so I just want us to make sure that we understand how what the expected functionality of a radio group is, just to make sure that we implement these options correctly. So on this page, it's a very basic page, so I know that the design is not great, but I think it's going to do its job. So I'm pressing the tab key. So notice that I'm in weekly picks number 1. So I'm in the first radio group, okay? And it went to the first choice, which is Vikings. Now, if I press tab again, I'm going into weekly picks number 2, which is actually a different group, the second group on this page. So I'm going to go back with tab, because once I tab into the radio group, to get to the other choices, I'm going to have to use the arrow key. So right now I'm using my right arrow key. Okay, so I want us to pay attention what's happening. Okay, so let me see if I can actually, yeah. So when I first tab into the radio group, the choice, the focus choice was Vikings, and it wasn't selected because that's how a radio group behaves. If there's no selection made, because maybe it's the first time you're kind of like reaching to that radio group, it's going to go to the first choice. If there's already a choice made, it's going to go to that choice. So had I come to this radio group before, and maybe I picked the Rams, I would have tabbed first into the Rams choice, okay? And then with the arrow keys, I can move to the other teams as well. Okay. Now this is the kind of implementation that we have right now, and you might think already what problem it creates, because as the user makes a choice for us, yes, that choice is immediately registered, and they are done with that entry. They exit out of that entry, which means that we have, there are 16 games, I think, so 32 teams. So let's say I start with a blank slate. I haven't selected any teams yet. In order for me to get, let's say, to the first team on the 15 game, okay, because they are listed vertically. I'm gonna, every time I press the arrow key, that choice is going to be made for me. I'm going to be kicked out of that page, and I have to come back, press the arrow key. Now that choice was made for me. I'm leaving the page again. I'm coming back that many times. So for a keyboard user, this kind of setup doesn't work, because the selection follows the focus. Every time I move to a different choice, now Rams is in focus, but it's also a selected choice. So my suggestion is that we do something like I have in weekly picks number 2. It's not the only one, but I'm just showing you one option, where when I tap to the Vikings, I'm pressing now the arrow keys. Notice that Patriots is not selected. I'm going to have to press the space bar to select it, okay? And if I don't like it, if I change my mind, I'm pressing the space bar again and it's deselected, which means that I am still on the page. I can still change my mind. The other thing that I did differently here is that as the footnote indicates, is not just one radio group. I have two radio groups for each game. And if I remember correctly, the last audit I did, this is the setup that we had. We had a radio group for each game. And this is really helpful for screen reader users because if I'm tabbing to a radio group,
Karina, we did change that. It's just one big group now because you can only make one selection. So even if there's two, like on the left, right? If there's two different games, you can only select one item. So we did one big radio group for all the radios.
So I'll share what the problem is, and maybe we'll find a solution. So if I'm a screen reader user, so if I tab into a radio group, I have the option. Actually, it's not an option. I have to do that. I have to name it. And you can use ARIA label or ARIA label by. In this case, we probably, I don't know if it's relevant for somebody to, when they make a selection, to know when and what time the game is, but they will probably need to know, the teams playing. Okay, so it's going to be, this will be like if I'm tabbing on the right, the radio group at the top. I just realized that I didn't change the same teams. My apologies for the number 2 and number 3. I tap to it, and it's going to be announced Sunday, October 20th group. And I'm most likely first I'm going to get to the Vikings. It's going to say Vikings radio. So I need to know, as a screen reader user, I need to know which game I'm on. So you might say, well, wait a minute, but it's going to be, I'm going to Vikings and maybe I'm going to Patriots. So I have to think, well, that's the game. That's fine. If it's my first two choices. But imagine I'm going down to game 10. Like I would have to keep track. Okay, if I get to, let's say I get to Patriots. Okay, is the team before the Patriots is the one that they're playing, or is the team after the Patriots? That's the game between the two. So it's going to be really confusing.
I see. Yeah, I think that's where your audit comes in. Is accessibility trumps what we have on the UX, right? Like we want to conform to ALI standards. And if we need to create separate radio groups for each game, then yeah, we will do that. And it's easy to do because anytime you click on a radio right now, it just makes a function call, and it just calls and saves into our database and updates our cache. So that's not a problem. I think that the bigger thing is if we need to conform to these accessibility standards, then we should do that.
And it's also, again, the choices on the right hand side. It's the kind of options where the selection doesn't follow the focus. Okay, notice. So if we do this, I think we are safe because then we can still prevent programmatically that the user only makes one choice.
How did you do it so that you can tab, but you have to press spacebar to select it?
So that's the default spacebar with the spacebar for when you're using an input type radio, but you can also programmatically do it with enter.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine.
We can add that. Yeah.
So currently how we have it on our site, if you go to it and you tab and then you press arrow to the next team, does it select it or do you have to press spacebar?
Okay. So I only got to the right to access the weekly picks page like this afternoon. So I spent some time. The problem I had is that right now we have no focus. Okay. So it's really difficult for me to know where I was. So I had to use the tree because it's telling me which item is focused, but it's still very difficult. So I tab to the title. So firstly, when you tab to the title, then the focus goes to the first team, first game. Okay, but actually, because we have that's something also I just realized, and maybe has something to do with football, and the home team actually gets focus. So our first team is the team on the right. I was a bit confused
Correct.
about that, but okay. But
That's because the data from ESPN has the home team first, and with our CSS, we flipped it. So we flipped the order because when you're reading on screen, it's this team at that team, which is at their house, so at home.
okay,
And so we flipped it based on the data. So
okay.
that's why the home team's
I
selected
will,
on the
yeah, I will look into it. I mean, it's probably not ideal, but it's not the biggest.
And I mean, there's ways to force the tab to go left to right too. So there
So I
we
mean,
can look at that.
that's not the biggest issues I had is that I could, as a keyboard user, I could only go to the first home team, like the first game.
Oh, okay.
Yes, because the moment and then I could use the arrow key. Let's say, okay, so I because I had 3 entries, so I could play a little bit with that, like because I needed like fresh pages where there's no selection, so I could test more, and I ran out of options. So I tab to it, so I get to the first home team first game. I'm
Do
using
you
the
want to
arrow
show
key.
us right now? Do you have access to it?
You know what? It's so I'm gonna have to. I can stop the sharing. I have to because I'm logged. I'm gonna have to.
That's okay then, because
Is that okay?
your
Yeah.
time is up anyways. But
Okay. I'm just.
I wanted to see if
It's.
anybody else had any like comments or questions for Karina.
Oh yes, I do.
Let me
Karina,
stop the.
like
Should
Oh,
I
you can
stop the
keep it.
sharing or okay?
Oh,
Okay.
you can keep it. It's
Yeah.
okay.
oh yeah, sorry, Karina. I wanted to ask you, how can I, cause my, how can I, as an engineer who's working on the code, be take initiative and be conscientious of those who do use keyboards? Should I, after I implement the code, should I always go in and tab afterwards? Sashi, cover your ears. I know it might be out of my scope, but I just want to make sure I have that in the back of my head and I'm conscious of it and I'm making efforts towards, making good actions towards it. So how can I be better about that?
Definitely. Sometimes people will say start with a screen reader. Screen reader is really difficult, but I think we all know how to use the keyboard. And whatever impacts a keyboard user, you could have like a sighted keyboard user. It's also definitely going to impact the screen reader user. Okay, so then there's some extra stuff that apply to screen readers. Yes, this is the first recommendation I give to everyone. Try with the keyboard. Those of you who have access now to the weekly picks page, you will notice that once after the second tab, you don't know where you are. First of all, right now we don't have focus, and it's fine because we probably haven't dealt with yet. And then if you press tab again, you're gonna be taken to the feedback button. Okay, and then you're wondering, okay, what happened in between? And you don't see where the focus goes. And then if you press, you would have to know to press space bar, and then you'll see things happen very quickly. That the selection was made. And then you brought.
Yep, it definitely does that. I just chose the Browns, Alex.
And it's
aired out.
impossible. Yeah,
You're
it's
gonna lose.
to go to other picks, and unless you're being kicked out of the page and go back. And one other thing that I quickly want to mention, notice that I'm on the Vikings. I'm in focus.
Oh,
yes.
I switched your screen to mine, Karina.
Oh, you did? Okay,
I'm on the actual website. And
oh, you are? Okay, super.
Yeah. So I was tabbing, and when I press tab first, it does go to the heading, and then when I press tab again, it goes straight to feedback. So the ordering is definitely off. So yeah, but then if I tab and I press down, it chooses the Browns for me.
And you can. I wasn't able to. I only got to like the first two teams. I kept, I wasn't. So I think what we had before is a little bit better with making sure that focus doesn't force a selection right away. Let the user arrow their way through the teams. And then a quick other thing is that, focus and selection, they're two different states. So we need to show an outline when it's in focus, and we need to show an outline, a different outline, maybe the border when it's selected. And if a tab meets both of the requirements, we have to have those both.
So let me show you guys something. This is what I usually do when I do like audits or look at the DOM elements and how they're structured. I disable all styles. You see, so now if I disable all styles in tab, you see it goes to the menu, and then when I tab again, it goes to the link, and then when I tab again, like you'll see, as you tab, you can see what's happening inside the page itself. Without, like, now it's like in the feedback, right? So you can see what's happening without like the UX at all, and that's how the structure of your application is. And that's an easy way to audit and kind of view like what's happening, because right now you can see the structure top down is that's how it looks like, and then we have these weeks, and then somehow we don't have focus on the inputs, and then it went straight to feedback. So if I tab, it's tab and then tab again, and then went straight to feedback down here in the bottom left. And this tool is the web developer plugin for Chrome. It's really simple. It has a lot of stuff in here that you can use. So
what's the name of it, Shashi?
Web developer.
Oh, okay. Easy.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Anything else for Karina? Nothing. You never disappoint, Karina, with your accessibility expertise. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Next, we have the software sorcerers, which is the functional programming or engineering team. And Alex is going to be demoing us something from the team.
Yep. Can you all hear me pretty good?
Yes.
Sweet. So let me get this pulled up. You can go ahead and share. And let me know once you guys can see that.
Can see.
Okay, sweet. This part I'll kind of go through a little bit quickly because there's a lot kind of going on, but I'll try to break it down. So right now, what I worked on is the table data. What this component does is it's basically like an empty table that can take in certain amounts of data in columns and render whatever type of data that you want.
Hey, Alex.
Yeah.
There's a lot of blank space. Could you zoom in a couple of notches? It would just be easier to see.
Oh, I'm not sure if I'm able to zoom in on my laptop.
You should be able to. Are you on a Mac? No, you're on PC. Control and then plus. Press the control and then plus. There you go.
Oh, cool. Sweet. So can you all see that better?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. That's better.
Yeah, absolutely. So to kind of explain this table component is right now it's basically empty. And what I'm doing right now is I'm rendering certain columns, which in this case are the league columns, because we want to be able to display the league data into it. And this is the league data. And kind of explain what league data is when you scroll up here, I created a fetch data function. And what this does is it's getting all the entries of every league that the user is a part of. So let me go ahead and dive in here. And what this function does is it takes the user's leagues, which is an array of strings. And what it does is it queries through the database, goes to the entries collection. And the reason I have 5,000 is because Appright only limits us to 25 documents as a default. So you kind of have to hard code and say like, hey, we want 5,000 because there's like, I want to say right now there's probably like 400 or 500 entries so far, which that'll increase as we get more users. And then I save that as a response. And then I want to get all the entries of every league. So what I do is I map out the league, assign it as league ID for each of the league. And then it's going to go ahead and grab every entry of every league. And the reason I filter through it is because with the Appright, the league IDs are set up as relationships. So I'm not able to just simply query and just grab it. So what I have to do is filter through it, and I go, hey, every entry league ID that matches the league ID that I give Appright, like, hey, return the document for it. So then
So
it's
you're
going
saying
to
that query is not like the user query where you can say, hey, only give me the entries for the league ID? Right?
yeah.
Because the other one was like by user ID and then, or league ID, right?
Yeah, let me find an example. But yeah, so if you see this query equals league ID,
Mhm.
this works because the league ID is hard coded into the database, but it's not going to work for the function that I created because in the Appright database, it's actually set up as a relationship, not an actual like string.
I see. So is that a limitation of Appright that we should give feedback to? So that because if you do it this way, right? Let's say you
Hmm.
have 1,000,000 entries and you only need 50 that match up league ID, you have to filter through all 1,000,000 of those entries, opposed to passing it through as a query saying, hey, I only need the ones that match this ID. So I think that's a good piece of feedback that we can give to Appright.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And because right now, since it's a relationship, if we query and say, because in the database it's set as league, and if we query and select league, it'll return an error and be like, hey, nothing like that exists because it's actually a relationship. And what the relationships are in the database is it's just like a drop down arrow that has all the league IDs, but we have to like filter through it and say, hey, if this ID that is in the drop down matches the league ID that I give you, like return the document. And then so I'm returning them all as league entries. So I'm getting all the entries from the leagues. And then for this one, I want to get all the leagues that are alive because in the data table, we want to be able to show like all the leagues that are not eliminated. So once again, I do the filter and it goes through the same collection and it's going to get the eliminated status of the entry. And if it equals false, then it's going to return that.
Is
And
that because we display them both? We display all the entries and then we separately display the alive entries?
yeah, so
Okay.
for the data table, what we want to do is, and then I can also show that too. I'm going to render the screen for more visual. So basically what we want to do is we want to show the league information with survivors, participants, and then we also want to show like all the total entries. And then next to that, we want to show the entries that are still alive for data.
Okay, so here's a performance improvement. Right
Yeah.
now, you're iterating through all the leagues, right? On line 519, right? And then you're saying, hey, if you match the league ID, then return or save it into the object. And then you're iterating again
Mhm.
through the league entries and saying, okay, now if you are not eliminated, add yourself to the alive entries. You can do that all in one call because you already have it on 520. You're saying that, oh, if if you equal that, then return. You can say, okay, so if you equal that, then let's see if you're eliminated, and if you are, then let's add you also into this variable. So then now you're saving yourself, another additional iteration through. So the time complexity then is saved because you're already going through the data already.
Okay, so it could be basically just combine these two, so it's not filtering through all like 500 and then filtering through them all again, kind of.
Yeah, because even if you have 1,000,000 to go through and then you have 500, you went through another 500 because you're gonna have, but you already went through the 500. So as you're going through the 500, you already have the data, and then you can just say, hey, if you're not eliminated, let's add you to this variable as well because I need the data for it. But um, that allows you to do that. And then because you're only doing length, you can simply just do like an increment, instead of length. Because if you save all that data into alive entries, then the object's gonna get bigger. But if it's just a number that increments, then it's going to be easier. You start at 0 and then you say, hey, if you're not eliminated, just add 1 to it, right? Because the way that I see that how you're using the data, you're just counting it. You're not like directly using it.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet. And then, yeah, that's what he was talking about. Like, is returning the length as a number, but I can increment. And then, for like type errors, because since all of this is in entries, it returns the entries.
Yep. So like that's like a next level way of thinking, right? Because every iteration you go through, every filter, every map, every loop, it creates more latency for the code itself to go through and figure out. Like, yeah, we're only working with hundreds of entries, but once you work with a few 100,000 millions, it matters. And by doing it now, then it's going to set you up for the future where it's like, okay, my way of thinking is I'm already gone through this once. I'm gonna just do this operation twice since I already have it. I mean, I'm not gonna duplicate the operation. I already went through the data, and so now I'm just gonna use the data I have. And then at the same thing with the length is you're counting like the number of what is it? Yeah, objects in there or arrays in there. So instead of doing that, just use a number, because then it's simple. It's just like, oh, okay, I'm just going to incrementally count you up if you're not eliminated. Then that gives you the number you need.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I'll work on that right after this.
Cool.
But that is to kind of explain the entries. And then what I did for the leagues was because like the entries. So to kind of explain it, we also want to show like the league name, the league participants and survivors. But since the entries database doesn't have that, I also have to go get the user leagues, which I use a data store of user because since I'm logged in, like it already has all the leagues that I'm a part of. So I just grab the user from the data store .leagues, which is all my leagues. And then I go grab that information with this function. And this is just the utils function that Chris created. What it does is it just maps through the leagues that I pass it. And then each league ID that it has this is what the query, like, because this isn't a relationship, it's able to query it from AppWrite. And it's saying, hey, every ID that matches the ID you give me, it's going to return the league ID, name, logo, and participants, which is the data that I want. So,
do you have the UX working right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see it.
Yep. And then kind of real quick, the reason for the combined data is it's 2 separate datas and I combine them and make them working. So let me go ahead. And as you can see, I'm part of 4 leagues right now. So let me go ahead and go up and go to the admin dashboard. And then when I go to leagues, this is a table and it's loading. And now I know why it's taking a little bit longer to load is because of the filtering.
Well, it's partially that too. If once we get to performance tracking, we will start to see numbers and all that, and then you'll start to see like the impact. Like right now, it took that long, but we only have 4 leagues and like 200, like 200 entries. So think about if we had 2,000, right?
Yeah.
Like it's gonna be even slower. So every single piece of optimization is going to matter.
Yeah, I'll definitely get started on that and do that. So as you can see, like since me as a user, I'm part of 4 leagues. So for you guys, like it would be different. So let's look at the gridiron, like it's showing the amount of survivors, which I obviously know like 2 of these are test users. So that tells me there's only 2 survivors left. At the beginning, there's 103 participants. There's a total of 195 entries, which that kind of shows me that not everybody used all of their entries because each user gets 5 entries. So ideally, this would have been 500. So that kind of tells me that not too many people participated. And then this shows that there's actually 4 entries alive. So that tells me that we're down to 2 people. And of those 2 people, there's 4 entries alive. And then in the table, I have it so to where it can filter from like longest to shortest and then filters that. and then filters through each of them.
Yeah, I mean, this is looking really good. This is a lot of work that you have to combine a ton of data because it's not straightforward where it's like, hey, for the league, give me this entry. No, the entries table, it groups everything in there. So that makes it more difficult. So it's come a long way. And I would say this, Alex, is keep it where it's at. The performance improvements are a good phase two. Let's get this out. Let's get it reviewed. And then on phase two, we can implement and make it better. So always try to get it done, make it work, and then these improvements and things that that we can get to make it faster, or even the UX, we can always improve that. But if you never ship something, it will never get out there. So
Yeah. And then the one thing that I kind of had a quick question about. So I have a use effect where it updates every time something within the user league database changes, like someone gets eliminated or someone joins the league. Do you want it this way, or do you want it to just render like once when they come to the page?
so when you exit the page, does it unmount the component?
Yes.
Yeah, so if it unmounts it, then you just need it once. Unless if like we're still trying to figure out that menu bar at the top. I'm gonna have discussions with a list because it's becoming more confusing to have that like menu at the top, the quick jump. Like we don't know if it's a jump or if it's like filtering by leagues and stuff. So I'm pretty sure we're gonna remove it and then just have the filtering inside the page itself. So yeah, if it's unmounting, then it makes sense to just load it up once. And then if the user needs to see updated data, well, they'll most likely just come back, right? Come back or go to a different page and come back, and then it will update itself.
Okay. Sweet. But that is all. I'll definitely look into this API function and do this and rework the function so that way it loads faster.
No. Did you hear me? I said don't do it.
Oh, for that? Okay.
Don't do it. Phase two, okay? You got it working. It's looking good. There's always room for improvement. Let's do a review. Let's have the team review this and play around with it. And there's bugs that come out of it, then that's what you do. But for the enhancements, let's keep it the way it is, and then there is room for improvement there.
Okay. Sweet.
Cool. Awesome. Any questions for Alex? Any comments, questions? I'll speak for you guys. Mai says, man, this is pretty cool. Richard says, oh my gosh, it looks so cool. The admin panel has progressed so much. Danielle says, you're doing great.
I want to ask you too, Alex, what was the most challenging but rewarding thing you learned from this ticket? It seems like you've done so much, you've learned so much, and you're like, you know how to extract the data. And yeah, so what was the most challenging but yet rewarding part of it?
I would kind of say, for one, getting the entries and the alive entries, because for one, it was kind of confusing to query through it because it was like, hey, there's nothing like that exists. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, there's a actual attribute that says it. And that's why I like figured out like, hey, like the best thing to do is to filter through it. So that was one thing, trying to get that to work. And then another thing is, because since I'm using a Shadcyan component, I have to get things to work the way that it likes it. So I had to take both types of data and I had to like mesh them into one and get them working together and accurate. And then I had to like pass it through to the table, and then fixing all the errors with that and making sure every like type error was figured out. But yeah.
Yeah, I would say that this piece of work that you did is very common in the workforce. When you get more advanced features or bigger features, where you have to get multiple pieces of data, you have to combine them, like iterating through data too, like how you did, like you had to do 2-3 times. Like that is very common, and that's why big companies stress about time complexity, because as you saw, we only had like what, I don't know, 4 leagues and 200-300 entries, but it was quite slow. It
Yeah.
might have been your computer, it might have been AppWrite's, service, but something was slow, and we would have to measure that performance and then figure out where the bottlenecks are. So, but then anything you do and you can implement to make it faster and better, then it's not on you, right? Then we can say, hey, it's actually on your service that's, the bottleneck and not my front end. We've optimized it as much as we can, and there's more, but we've done a good job at it. So those things are important. I mean, it's not a requirement for juniors like to do that. Like what you have, it works, right? But it's from my end to let you know that, hey, you can do this better for next time, right? So those things are learning opportunities, and things that everybody will have to like upgrade and level up to get to that point where it's like, oh, I understand this, I went through this before, I'm going to optimize it right away, right? So those are kind of things that, as you get better and more experience, you'll just do it. Like you'll just do it, and then it's like, second nature, pretty much. So these big features, and this was a good feature. And comparing to some of the things that I get at work, like this is probably just a medium sized ticket. There's a lot more bigger ones, a lot more functionality, a lot of connections and stuff like that. But this application, I think, is really good for everybody because there's things that you can go and just get used to, like the little bugs that Cody and Daniel have been doing, right? Getting your feet wet. And then there's going to be tickets like the one Alex is doing, where it's like, oh, there's data at the many places. There's functionality that we don't have. Do I have to write it? Yep, you have to write it. You have to update it and modify it. Yep, if you have to, then you do it. And then you have to unit test it. And like, there's just a lot of things that happen. So that's why this app is pretty nice, because it's a fully functional application. Users are using it. There's a lot of challenges. And as we get more data, then we have more data to work with as well. So, and a lot of like dependencies too. Like this data depends on that data, depends on that data. Alex knows what this, like, it's just like, whoa, like I gotta grab like 4 different pieces of table and collections and bring them all together. And then how do I map those together? So those challenges are going to come. And those are the things that on the day to day, I would, want you to do if you work for me, is give me that kind of feature and say, okay, here, go figure it out. So very cool. Great job, Alex. Any other questions for Alex?
Yeah, I have a question, and it's okay if you can't answer it right now. But so I've been focusing, you all know, on accessibility and understanding the front end piece. For someone who would like to understand the back end piece, what would you recommend as an entry point? In terms of just like, I guess, like just looking at the files, but since I don't know anything about backend, where would I start? Again, if this is too difficult of a question, it probably is because it's like a million things to consider. You can give me an answer later.
No, yeah. I guess like a good entry point is because like I mostly want to focus on front end, but what I kind of deal with is I work closely with the back end, like kind of knowing how to be able to fetch that data and like manipulate it in the way to where it shows up on the front end, like the way that you want to. So like in this case, like what I did was AppWrite is like our backend as a service. So like AppWrite does all the backend and like has a table. So kind of like understanding how to fetch that data and return it in certain ways.
Yeah, just the basic fundamentals, you would say. I would say this, Karina. The best one of the another good opportunity is for everybody. You have this code base locally. You don't have access to the database, which sucks. We're getting there. We're getting there. But reverse engineer the features and the pages. Go to them, and because you have it locally, you can start putting breakpoints on things and start tracking it and figuring out how everything connects to each other. I could walk through this too one day, where we breakpoint an area and then we use the stack trace to go backwards to understand how this app is working for that particular page or that feature or even that submit button. What does it do, right, to get the data there and get the data back? When you start to understand the connections and how things work, then you can like dig a little deeper. because just understanding that from the surface is good knowledge to have, because then you can start to understand how this app is built together, what the helper files do, utility classes, and all of that. So that would be one of the best things to do.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, so I wanted to go through the sprint board very fast, as I can, I guess. Okay, so currently, right now, it's the end of the sprint tomorrow, and we have 9 items completed. Team logo picture, connection. This one was a milestone ticket that Cody did. Notification needed a way to exit. Daniel completed that. For Ryan, improved the UX for admin page. Just little tweaks here and there for styling. Chris added unit testing for API functions. Did research for self-hosting. We got that all set up. We're just waiting for the competition to be over. Then we're going to switch over. We updated the NFL logos in our database. We fixed the contrast for sign-in sign-ups. And then we also implemented the spinner for the submission buttons. So all those 9 items are done. Tomorrow I will archive them, and then the next sprint will start. And then this way, every 2 weeks, we understand all the items that we have completed as a team, and individually too. You can filter by yourself to do that. And so these items, there's still 8 in review. I know I talked to many of you guys already about that. And also the items blocked too. These items, if you're still blocked, please ask me or whoever you need to get unblocked. That way we can continue to move these forward. There's 8 items in progress, which is good for now. And just so another way to think about it is the sprint is ending tomorrow. And how did you do yourself on giving yourself sprint points, right? We have the Fibonacci scale here. You go back and reflect how you did. And okay, I don't want to single anybody out, but there's some people that have been changing their sprint points. Don't change it. Stick whatever you had at first, keep it, and then reflect on it later and saying, oh yeah, that should have been an 8 instead of a 2, right? Then you learn and you understand how to get better. There's no docking or anything for that, but it's more so for yourself and for me to understand what you feel it's going to take. And sometimes it takes longer or sometimes it's shorter, and that's great. But then you learn from it, right? Because when a PM does it, they plan the sprint based on how many points you can finish in 2 weeks, and then that's how many tickets they give you based on the sprint value, right? The point value. And then some weeks there might be 20 items, some weeks there might be 10 because there's a lot more heavy lifting items. But that's how a lot of teams gauge velocity of individuals and teams. And so I want to start doing that for the team as well, is just self-reflecting, hey, you had 10 sprint points for 2 weeks. Were you able to get them all done? Or, do you need more time or whatnot? So that way it gives you an understanding of, okay, every 2 weeks we have these deadlines, and am I getting them done on time? Do I need more time? Or do I have less time than I figured and I can only do, a few points at a time? And so that allows you to kind of balance yourself and balance the items that you're taking. And it goes a long way, because when you go work for a company, they'll do the same thing. Is they'll give you some items. They might already have points in their head already, but you have to t-shirt size it or Fibonacci, give it sprint points. And then they measure you off of that. Is okay, you got 13 points. That means 2 weeks. That's 1 ticket. Did you finish it up? Yes. Okay, great. The next time when we give you a ticket that, items that match up to 13 points, we know that you can finish those in 2 weeks. And so it's like an average, right? So it predicts it. And then I don't have this insights. I don't think it's going to work, but the insights will tell you okay, that's myself, right? If I'm doing good or not based on the points I get per week. Jira does a better job because it can track all of that. This GitHub is more like a waterfall style agile board. It doesn't track everything. So when you go and work in Jira or some other Azure DevOps, those things can track all these like data points, and PMs, they use that to understand the velocity of their team. So same thing with us too. Like we'll kind of gauge it and be flexible with it, but just know that it's a way for you to learn how to estimate your tickets and how to give yourself time and how to understand that, oh, like I have in the to do, right? This was 2 weeks ago. Oh, I still have 3 items left and I only got one done this week. Some like, what did I do? Self reflecting, like, how can I get them more? Or do I need to reach out and say, hey, after a week, I don't have time for the rest of these 3. Like, you can, hand them off to somebody else. What I do is, like, Danielle and Cody have been going through their tickets really fast. And so I would onboard them to somebody else's ticket because it's in the to-do column, right? I didn't add tickets from the backlog because these are the items that we have set to get finished in that sprint, the 2 weeks. And if we can't get them done, then as people free up, then we just add them to these tickets. And that way we could try to finish up all the items that we planned to get done in 2 weeks. Was that a lot?
So one thing, I know Chris's ticket is currently blocked. It's his last ticket. That's the one that you're taking over, right?
Correct.
Okay, do you want to move that over to in progress then?
Nope.
No,
Not yet.
it's still blocked. Okay.
Look, I still have one item.
Yeah.
One item in progress at a time. Oh, well, Ryan has 2. I have 2. How did I get 2? Somebody moved it for me already. So, yeah. So that should go to do because I'm not working on that right now. Okay. Any other comments, questions? No, are you sure? Like, this is a lot, like a lot to learn. Please ask questions.
I guess for like everyone else too, and for myself. So obviously I have 2 items blocked, but the reason why they're blocked is due to some circumstances that are like I can't control. So in like situations like this, would you think project managers would be understanding if I go to them and be like, hey, like I can't do these tasks because of like this, and like it's kind of like have our hands up, like there's nothing we can do about it?
Yes. Partially then they're gonna ask like a workaround. Or we have to continuously like figure out a path forward. So I know this one, this one here, let's review that and get it in. I know it's not going to work the way we want it to, but once it's completed and the Apprights fixes their BCC, then we can get it in, right? But we can go ahead and review it and like test out the regular functionality there so that it works properly. So
Okay.
cool. Okay, so I do have to go. Today is my wedding anniversary, and we're gonna go out for dinner. So we're gonna get some hot pot.
Oh, congratulations to you and your
Barbecue.
wife.
Thank you. So yeah, I just want to wrap up. This is everybody's doing a great job. Communication's really good. Definitely keep asking questions, and if there's anything that you are not sure of, always just come ask me. I'm always here trying to provide answers for y'all. And this week, there's 2 survivors left. It may end. So hopefully it ends so that we can clean some things up and then restart our revival pool. But other than that, like there's so much to do still, and there's so many more features to build. So lots of opportunities, and always if you need anything, just let me know. I'm having one-on-ones with the new individuals that joined the team a few weeks ago. So I'm going to talk to them as well and just kind of get things going. And then the rest of you, I'll probably plan for one-on-ones as well, maybe in a week or 2, so that we can just continue to stay in sync. So great job. Keep it up. And I will see everybody in the next one. Bye.